I had never thought much about the quiet rhythm of our household. Days moved in their usual pattern: work, family, the maid coming in to do her chores, and me trying to keep everything balanced under one roof. My spouse trusted me, my family looked to me for steadiness, and most evenings felt like clockwork. Yet sometimes, even in the most ordinary routines, a single shift can disturb everything. That shift came the evening our maid's son showed up at our door. It wasn't the first time I had seen him. Occasionally, he came by to pick her up after work or to help carry heavy things. He was polite, a little reserved, the type of presence that blended easily into the background. But that night, when he arrived, something about him felt different. Maybe it was the way his eyes lingered longer than usual, or maybe it was just me noticing him in a way I hadn't before. The house was unusually quiet. My spouse was preoccupied, my children in their rooms, and I was left in the living room when he entered. He greeted me softly, his voice carrying both respect and hesitance. We exchanged a few casual words, but beneath them, I felt a strange current, a sense of awareness I couldn't quite place. As minutes stretched into an hour, I realized it had grown late. The maid had already left, and her son seemed uncertain whether to stay or return home. He mentioned the distance, how traveling at that hour wouldn't be safe. The thought of him leaving unsettled me more than it should have. Almost before I realized it, I heard myself saying, "It's late. You should stay here tonight." The words hung in the air. I wasn't sure if I had spoken out of kindness or something else entirely. He looked at me, startled, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then he nodded, quietly accepted my offer. I arranged a space for him, trying to make the gesture feel natural, as though it was nothing out of the ordinary. But inside, I was restless. There was something about knowing he would be under the same roof through the night that stirred emotions I couldn't name. Later, as the house settled into sleep, I found myself replaying our brief conversations. The way his presence had altered the air around me. I thought of the risks, the lines that should never be crossed, the trust one could betray. And yet, in the middle of all that, I couldn't ignore the quiet pull, the sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. I told myself it was harmless, just one night, a guest under our roof. Nothing had happened, nothing would happen. And yet, deep down, I knew that stories of betrayal don't begin with grand decisions. They begin with moments like these. Small choices. A simple invitation. A quiet stirring that refuses to fade. As I lay in bed, I could hear faint movements from the other room. My heart beat faster than it should have, responding not to what was happening, but to what could happen. And in that silence, between guilt and desire, a dangerous path began to unfold. The house had long fallen into silence. From the outside, it must have looked peaceful, windows dim, curtains drawn, the world outside hushed. Yet inside, in the quiet corners of my mind, there was anything but peace. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint rustle seemed to remind me that I was not alone in this silence. He was here, just a few steps away, breathing under the same roof. I turned over on my bed, restless. The thought of him lingered, like an echo refusing to fade. Finally, unable to bear the stillness, I rose and walked toward the room where I had asked him to stay. The light was off, but the door stood slightly ajar as though waiting for me. He wasn't asleep. I could tell by the faint rustle as I stepped inside. He sat up when he noticed me, his eyes catching the dim glow from the hallway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt as if words might break the fragile air between us. "I hope you're comfortable," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I wasn't sure if I should really stay. It feels strange." His honesty disarmed me. I leaned against the doorway, searching for something neutral to say, but instead, the silence filled with something heavier. Curiosity, perhaps even longing. "Strange for me, too," I admitted, almost whispering. "But it's all right. Sometimes being here feels less lonely." His gaze shifted at my words. I could see in his eyes a recognition, as if he understood more than he should. That recognition frightened me, yet it drew me in closer. I stepped farther into the room. each movement deliberate, though I pretended otherwise. We spoke quietly at first about small things, about work, about his life outside of these walls. But slowly, the conversation deepened. He told me how he often felt unseen, moving through spaces where no one truly noticed him. I confessed how the routines of my own life had left me feeling empty, as though I were performing a role rather than living. There was something intimate in exchanging truths we would never say in daylight. The walls, the dark, the lateness of the hour, all of it conspired to strip us of pretenses. As we spoke, I sat down at the edge of his bed. Too close, perhaps. My hand brushed against his by accident, or maybe not by accident. He didn't pull away. The touch was faint, tentative, but it sent a wave through me I couldn't ignore. I told myself to stop, to stand up, to leave before the moment could become anything more. Yet I remained, held there by the quiet pull between us. He looked at me then, truly looked, and in his eyes I saw the same conflict that burned in mine, fear and desire, guilt and longing intertwined. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, as though time had slowed, just for us. And then, without words, the boundary we both knew so well simply gave way. His hand met mine deliberately this time, fingers lingering. My breath caught, my thoughts scattered. We leaned closer, drawn by a force neither of us had the strength to fight. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, tentative, almost fragile. Yet it carried the weight of everything forbidden. A spark, ignited in silence, became fire beneath the surface. When it finally happened, I felt both alive and undone. Every unspoken rule shattered, every hidden desire laid bare in that dimly lit room. The guilt was there, sharp and undeniable, but so was the raw, undeniable truth. I wanted this. I wanted him. The night unfolded slowly, like a secret the world could never know. And in that faceless darkness, where names and roles blurred, we crossed into territory that could never be undone. Morning light has a way of exposing what the night works so hard to conceal. It slipped in through the curtains, soft but relentless, casting a pale glow across the room. I woke with a heaviness in my chest, as though the weight of what had happened pressed down on me before I even opened my eyes. For a few moments, I simply lay still, listening. The house was beginning to stir, faint footsteps in the hallway, the familiar hum of daily life returning. But in the room where I had found myself, it was still. He was there, sitting quietly at the edge of the bed, already awake, already aware. When our eyes met, the silence was different from the night before. It wasn't charged with possibility, it was heavy with reality. Neither of us spoke at first. There were too many words, and none that seemed safe. Finally, he cleared his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. We should pretend nothing happened. The simplicity of his statement struck me harder than I expected. Pretend nothing happened. As if we could erase the memory of hands, of whispered truths in the dark, of boundaries broken. As if desire could be folded neatly away like a blanket after use. I wanted to agree, to reassure him, to convince myself that this could vanish into silence. But a part of me resisted. I could still feel the echo of the night, a pulse under my skin that refused to be ignored. You're right, I finally said, forcing steadiness into my voice. No one can know. He nodded, though I could see the conflict in his eyes. For him, it was not only about secrecy, but about respect for his mother, for the home, for everything that bound us in ways that should have kept us apart. We left the room separately, careful not to draw attention. At breakfast, I sat across from my spouse, pretending as though nothing had changed, as though my world had not shifted in the space of a single night. Each smile I offered felt heavier than the last, every casual word strained against the guilt pressing in on me. Yet beneath the guilt, there was something else, a dangerous, aching longing. Throughout the day, I replayed moments from the night in stolen flashes. The way he had looked at me, the way silence had grown into something we couldn't contain. I wondered if he thought of it too, or if he had already buried it deep within himself. That evening, when the maid returned, he avoided my eyes. He moved quietly, efficiently, as though distance itself was the only way to preserve what little innocence remained. And yet, when our paths crossed, even briefly, the memory flickered between us like a hidden flame. I told myself it would fade with time, that one night could not undo the years of order and trust one had built in my life. But as days passed, the memory did not fade, it sharpened. I found myself waiting for moments when he might return, listening for the sound of footsteps I had no right to long for. The guilt did not lessen either. Every time I looked at my spouse, I felt the weight of betrayal more keenly. Every laugh at the dinner table, every gentle gesture reminded me of the line I had crossed. It was not just infidelity of the body, it was of the heart, of the quiet truths I had shared in the dark with someone who should have been untouchable. And yet, even in that torment, I could not bring myself to regret it fully. That night had awakened something in me, a part of myself I had buried beneath years of duty and silence. It was dangerous, it was wrong, but it was real. Perhaps we would never speak of it again. Perhaps it would remain only as a secret lodged between us, carried in glances, hidden in unspoken words. Or perhaps, one day, the pull would draw us together again, and we would once more step into that forbidden fire. For now, all I knew was this: some nights do not end with the dawn. Some nights live on, faceless and eternal, haunting the spaces between who we are and who we dared to be.